what are some gender/sexuality labels you use to describe yourself and what do they mean? So the gender label that I use to describe my gender would have to be gender fluid. It is the one I most resonate with. So gender fluid basically means that my gender identity and gender expression shifts and changes as as my life goes on. So it can change like every week, every day. Sometimes it changes like within the hour. Like my gender identity and like how I feel, my relationship towards gender just completely changes. Like it can do a full 180 or it can be like a subtle change. I'm done keeping up at this point. In terms of pronouns, my pronouns also change. So my preferred pronouns, I should say, because I do go by all pronouns. Like I do not particularly mind what people refer to me as, but then there'll be some days where I will be like, oh, maybe I actually prefer like he and they pronouns or like just they them pronouns. There will be days where I am like that, but on the whole, I do not particularly care. And I also like the term gender fluid because I never really like was tied I never liked the idea of being tied down to like one specific gender. So like I'm assigned female at birth and I was raised female, but I knew that wasn't like internally I was like that wasn't what described me. But then there would be times where it didn't describe me at all. Like I would resonate with more he him and resonate with male. But then there'd be other times like it could be the next day and I'm like, yeah, I am a girl. What's up? What's going on? So it was very confusing like throughout school, like between uniforms and then like uniforms, how teachers would refer to me, all of that sort of jazz, like bathrooms as well. That's a big issue. I always go for a gender neutral one because no matter what gender I'm feeling that day, I know that's always there. And that's another reason why we need gender neutral bathrooms. But yeah, it was always such a struggle growing up and like just wondering like why the hell isn't my gender staying the same? Like why can't I just like be okay with it? Why can't I just be okay with she her every day and not just like on the weekends, you know? So that's my relationship with gender. And in terms of my sexuality, I talk about this a lot, but I identify as asexual, which means that I do not experience sexual attraction and I do not see the need to engage in sex and all of that jazz. And that was also very confusing me throughout school because, like, especially around high school when when puberty hit and everyone would start talking about sort of like that sort of stuff and like how body changes and all that, but then everyone would start, getting it on. And then, like, in later years of high school, of course. But then, like, everyone would talk about crushes, or like getting into relationships, all of that sort of jazz. And I never saw the point to it. I was like, that's like, why is everybody doing this? What is the hype all about? And like, I've been in relationships before to like, because a common thing is that we all just sort of like try it out, try to fit in, whether that be with gender or sexuality. Then I did try some things out, like dating, all of that jazz. And I was like, that's not me. It's like why I don't see the hype in all of it. And there was a lot of times where I felt really broken because it's like, why aren't I experiencing the feelings that everybody else is describing to me? But then I found the term asexual and I learned that asexual simply just means sexual attraction and not necessarily romantic attraction, because I do experience romantic attraction. Like my romantic attraction, I identify as a lesbian. So I am attracted to female and feminine non-binary people. Like, because the term lesbian has also been like usually like a lot of people hear it's like, oh, a woman loving women. But since I don't identify as a woman, people think that I can't use that label. But like there are non-binary lesbians, there are trans lesbians, all of that sort of jazz. But now the meaning has gone into, instead of women loving women, it could be non-binary loving women, or someone who's non-man, identifies as non-man, loving other non-men, to include non-binary people in the definition. In terms of my sexuality and romantic attraction, I didn't know that those two could be split. I didn't know those two could be completely different until I learned what was called the split attraction model, which is basically the model that describes your sexuality, like your sexual attraction and your romantic attraction, as two different things. Like when you hear the terms gay or bisexual or lesbian or pansexual, they usually both encompass both romantic and sexual attraction. It's like what your romantic preferences are, what your sexual preferences are. But then once I learned about the split attraction model, I was like, oh my God, like I can be sexually attracted to nobody, but then romantically attracted to women and non-binary people. And it was like I had the key to my own mind. Like when figuring a lot of this out and exploring my queer identity, and I didn't explore a lot of my queer identity until I left school. But then once like so many labels came up, it was like the key to my own brain, in the same way that while I was figuring out my autistic identity, like hearing so many definitions, so many labels and meanings and all that jazz, it was the key to my own brain. And it was just such a thrilling thing to finally have a label that described what I was going through and to describe why, and to know that I wasn't broken, to know that I'm different, not less.